This is Lauren Burke. This is Lauren Live. Another discussion about the Texas primary, Jasmine Crockett versus James Tallarico. There's news about high turnout, high early voter turnout. Now, I have a hard time believing that that high early voter turnout is for Tallarico. I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but typically in these races where you have somebody who has a lot of personality, like Jasmine Crockett, typically what that means is that she has gotten the electorate excited about her candidacy because these are the types of candidates that get the electorate excited. And when I'm hearing high turnout, particularly in a place like Texas that has a history of not having a whole big level of excitement, and it's hard to get people to turn out, and they've had trouble getting people to turn out, they've had trouble getting people to get interested. That sounds like Crockett is driving turnout. Now, after I get past the open, I'm going to play a little bit of the open. I'll be back right now. I'm going to have a few people talking about that turnout who have noticed the exact same thing. So once again, I could be wrong. Maybe this high turnout that we're hearing about in Texas is about Tallarico. I tend not to think so. This is Rick Wilson and Andrew Wilson talking on their podcast, Lincoln Square. They have a really good weekly podcast that goes over poll numbers and various things. But at any rate, this came up on their podcast.
That are very, I think, very important indicators. One, Andrew, and you and I studied early voter turnout before. Early voter turnout in Texas for Democrats is blowing the doors off.
Yeah, massively over what
the over-indexing on Democratic turnout is. I mean,
now, so in terms of the polling, before we get to early vote, we do see a large enthusiasm gap, somewhere like 6 or 7% enthusiasm gap between Republicans and Democrats.
Now, think about that for a second. Okay, so they're seeing a bunch of enthusiasm in Texas on the Democratic side, but not so much the Republican side. The question is why? Why is there more enthusiasm on the Democratic side? Now, of course, the most obvious answer right in front of us is Donald Trump. And because we've seen this before in other races around the country and other special elections around the country, that Donald Trump is driving a ton of enthusiasm for the Democrats, and the Democrats are coming and running out and voting, and Democrats are winning seats in Iowa, which of course is crazy, and other places that shouldn't, that generally Democrats don't win. Is it Donald Trump driving the enthusiasm in Texas, or is it Jasmine Crockett?
Voting intention this year.
Yep.
In Texas. And we do see, those generic ballot numbers that tell us that Democrats are leading Republicans.
Yeah.
I think to see the sort of massive gulf that's emerging between, how many people are picking up a Democratic ballot and how many people are picking up a Republican ballot that's emerging in Texas, that is stunning.
It is. When I say unprecedented, folks, I hate that word. I hate using that phrase. It is unprecedented.
It is. It really is. Like and, I think it means a few things.
Beto's a friend, and I love him to death. But Beto didn't have this early.
No, he did not have this kind of.
And that could have been a national thing.
So, yeah, it could be a national thing. He was saying it was national, that, Beto didn't have the enthusiasm. When Beto ran, I think it was 2018. Okay, so here we have a situation. It could be Donald Trump. It could be Jasmine Crockett. It could be Donald Trump and Jasmine Crockett. It could be all three. It could be James Tallarico, Jasmine Crockett, and Donald Trump that's getting people to run to the polls. But I have a sneaking suspicion, because we've seen this movie before with these Black candidates that are really exciting, that people get really excited about. And oh my goodness, they can't wait to run out and vote for that person. Now, we saw it with Barack Obama on the other end of the personality scale, somebody who was very buttoned up in a sense, but still drove a lot of excitement because of his speaking ability. And Jasmine Crockett, that type of candidate that keeps saying, I'm going to fight for you and then going after people in hearings, that's exactly what the electorate likes. Okay. They like that type of fighter. It's that Bernie Sanders. I mean, I hate to, on the right, it is Donald Trump. I'm going to fight for you, even though he's not doing it, even though he's sending all our money overseas, all tax money is going overseas. But he did campaign on America first, and people react to that. They react to being told, you're going to fight for me. And that's what Crockett is doing
too. But
right.
This is big.
It's really big. I think it confirms what we've been saying, right? Like, I don't expect a lot of Republicans or independents to necessarily, there will be a lot of independents that flip. There won't be a lot of Republicans that flip to Democrats. There'll be some independents that do that, and then some that just don't vote. And that's, I think, what you're getting. There are clearly a lot of people who were Republicans who are probably just not voting.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So Paxson is over there probably depressing the votes for the Republicans. But I thought that was an interesting commentary with regard to, wait a minute, why is it that there's big turnout and early voting in Texas? Now, here is the David Pakman show where he's actually going to play CNN, and they notice the same type of thing going on.
CNN's data analyst, Harry Enton, almost blows a gasket with new data that shows Texas really is shifting red to blue, that we are seeing Democratic primary turnout come in really high, and we are seeing Republican primary turnout in those Texas Senate races low. Let's check this out, and then we will discuss.
Something is going on in Texas. Primaries are March 3rd. That's next week. There is a really interesting phenomenon happening, though, among who is voting. Let's get to CNN chief data analyst Harry Enton. We're not even exactly talking about the candidates here, which is why it might be even more important.
No, mind blown, to quote the show Blossom, Joey. Whoa. I mean, look at this. Okay, share of Texas midterm primary ballots at this point in the cycle cast in Democratic primaries or Republican primaries. In 2022, the last midterm, overwhelmingly, the votes were being cast in Republican primaries, 62%. But look at what's going on now in the 2026.
Okay, so as you can see on the screen, Harry Enton is pointing out the level of enthusiasm and the lack of enthusiasm. It's just a complete, really a flip here. 2026, you've got a 53%, which in Texas, this is shocking because Texas, I don't care what anyone says, Texas is a red state. Texas is a red state. All right. So for this to be happening is amazing in Texas. So that's the first thing. And as I can see from the chat, yeah, you've got some Texas Crockett haters out there. I mean, you've got some Crockett haters. Maybe this person, Brian Graham, is in Texas or not in Texas. I don't know. But if you're in Texas and you hate Jasmine Crockett, you're at least getting a reaction. She's at least getting a reaction one way or the other. Now, maybe the enthusiasm is against her. Maybe it's for her. We're going to find out in less than 72 hours. But something's going on with the enthusiasm level. Now, it could be Donald Trump. Could be. We've seen in other situations and other races that the enthusiasm gaps were, in fact, Donald Trump. And we saw that when he was in office the first time from 2016 to 2020. So could be Donald Trump. Might not have anything to do with Crockett, or it might be both. Okay, it might be both. But for you Crockett haters out there, understand that just like with Donald Trump, he gets a reaction, right? You get people going to the polls. A lot of people say, in fact, that, the anti-vote could be just as enthusiastic as the pro-vote, whether we're talking about Donald Trump or Jasmine Crockett or Bernie Sanders or anybody else. But something is driving that turnout in a place not known for their turnout. In fact, they're known for exactly the opposite.
Cycle. More votes are being cast on the Democratic side. What a shift from where we were 4 years ago at this point. More people in Texas picking up the Democratic ballot.
More Democrats are voting in Texas than Republicans. I mean, how unusual is that?
It's unusual.
How unusual? Well, you see the massive shift from 2022, but look at history. Go all the way back. When was the last time that more people actually picked up a Democratic ballot, cast a ballot in a Democratic
Prior to 1990s.
primary in Texas in the midterm? You have to go all the way back to 2002. So this could break an over 20-year stretch. My goodness gracious.
So those are like the Lloyd Benson years in 2002. It is unbelievable for Texas to be turning out that type of number of people on the Democratic side. Again, a red state. I mean, I know the Democrats have talked for years, oh, we can win Texas, we can do this, we can do that. The fact of the matter is that the Democrats really haven't come all that close. I mean, I guess you could say, okay, Beto O'Rourke in 2018 came within 2%. Yeah, okay. But Beto O'Rourke lost. I think the last time they lost, they won statewide. It was like, I think it was 1994 or something like that. And obviously our politics are completely different than what they were in the 1990s. But UK, somebody in the UK, this is great. But at any rate, the 1990s was the last time the Democrats did anything in Texas. Democrats haven't really done anything in Texas other than get beat statewide. The Democrats really get beat statewide. And so what's driving the turnout? What's driving the enthusiasm? And now you've got the president, Donald Trump, declaring a war. Oh, we're now at war in Iran, which I can tell you, if there's one thing that can join Democrats and Republicans together, declare a war and have our troops getting hurt in some foreign land that has nothing to do with anything that has to happen in the United States one way or the other. Send billions of our tax money overseas to something and see how, these are the things that unite Democrats and Republicans. And I'm not talking about Congress, a polarizing place. I'm talking about regular, normal, rank and file Americans. Most people do not want to see their tax money being spent overseas. And that happens to happen on the weekend right before the primary. Really? Now, of course, the Democratic primary. So maybe Crockett and Tallarico come out and say something that's similar about the now war in Iran. I don't know. I tend to doubt that. They're probably going to say something a little bit different. I'm sure they've had statements out already. Oh my goodness. So judging by the comments that I'm getting, I'm thinking that, and I'll send the links to everybody of what we're watching. I am showing like very short clips of this because, you can get punished on YouTube if you show too much of somebody else's content. But this is Rick Wilson, who was a Republican. He's a Republican consultant that became a never Trumper, and Andrew Wilson. This video, I'm just putting in the chat if people want to look at this themselves. I don't think these two are related. Rick and Andrew Wilson. Wilson, of course, is a very common name. But the other video is Harry Enton, of course, on CNN, going on and on about polling. And they're talking about Texas early turnout. And hey, everybody out there, not everything can be fake news. You can't make this stuff up. The poll is what it is. Sometimes these polls look great for the Republicans, and sometimes these polls look great for the Democrats. It turns out that these polls are showing, and you can measure the turnout, of course. You can measure the turnout. So you can measure the turnout and say, wait a minute, more Democrats showing up in Texas? That is weird. I mean, it would be like if more Democrats were showing up. I'm trying to think of a red state like, I don't know. Montana? I don't know. I mean, I just think Texas is such a big sample size. That's why so much is going to be learned on Tuesday. You're going to learn a lot about the Republicans. You're going to learn a lot about Democrats, about what style of Democrat is out there. Dallas is getting as bad as Austin, so it's no surprise she's winning. I've been to Austin, Texas. I think almost everybody in this country has probably been to Austin, Texas. One of the best cities in the country. One of the funnest cities in the country. And I've never been to Dallas. I've been to Houston. Only thing I know about Dallas is a TV show. I used to watch it in the 90s. At any rate, I'm just saying there's some enthusiasm here that needs to be checked out that clearly can be measured by the early vote. And you can insult me if you want. It don't matter. I'm from the Bronx. It ain't nothing. You ain't You know, you're talking to the daughter of a cop from Bronx, New York. So your insult ain't gonna penetrate. So maybe do that with somebody else. At any rate, so Texas is gonna show a lot about the Democratic Party, the direction the Democratic Party is going in, the style of candidate they want to run in the Trump era. There's been a lot of criticism of the party in terms of, hey, the party hasn't been tough enough. The party hasn't been savvy enough from a communication standpoint. Um, the idea that that the Democrats have not been equal to the challenge of Donald Trump is one of the questions on the table for this race. It's as simple as that. And I have a funny feeling that the voters are going to pick somebody that's a little bit more energetic in in their communications than James Talarico. And it's not that James Talarico is a bad communicator. It's just that he doesn't bring the same type of energy, and it's sort of a whole no holds bar type of energy. And that right there is the type of thing that we're going to find out in less than 72 hours. The Texas primary is a heck of a lot more interesting than it's been in years. Can anybody remember a more interesting Texas primary? I mean, I think Beto O'Rourke, it wasn't so much the primary, it was the general in his case. But this is interesting. You've got two types of Democrats that effectively believe generally the same things, but they're presenting it in very different ways with very different energy. And hey, that, friends, is going to be interesting to see how it all turns out. I happen to think that what's going to happen out there is a fairly close race, although the polls are all over the place. There was a poll last week to show Talarico ahead. Then there was a poll before that to show Crockett ahead. I mean, it's kind of like, really? You know what I mean? I mean, really? I don't know whether the polls are just not accurate or what. But again, the level of hatred for Crockett is kind of a tell in this country, right? I mean, certainly Donald Trump has set up a permission structure that has made racism acceptable in public. Obviously, with the advent of social media around 2006, 2007, you had a lot of people hiding behind fake names and hiding behind fake accounts so they can really say what they really want. And by the way, these are the same people who say racism doesn't exist. Why do we keep talking about certain issues? Why do you guys keep whining about, racism? The same people who say that are the same people who are the perpetrators of exactly that behavior. So it's a very interesting thing to watch. I actually think that Crockett's campaign, she has been keeping it to the issues, which is basically, look, you all that voted for Donald Trump are now watching billions in your tax money go to Iran and get blown up. I mean, what happened to America First? What happened to the peace candidacy of J.D. Vance and Donald Trump? They were talking about we're not going to do wars. They were criticizing Barack Obama for getting involved overseas, and now they're doing the exact same thing. Okay, so that's interesting, right? I mean, even Nick Fuentes was on video this morning. You guys in the chat may want to check your hero. He literally said, "F this." This was supposed to be about America first. This was supposed to be about fixing the problems in the United States. And now we're sending billions of dollars and perhaps our military over to fight yet another foreign war. Why? Why is the question, right? And so when somebody campaigns on one thing and does another, people get annoyed, as they should. But as I said, for the Democratic Party, there is going to be one hell of a battle in terms of answered questions, because there is two factions. Most parties, Republicans have their factions as well. It's not just the MAGA Republican Party, but the Democrats definitely have two factions because the Democratic umbrella is so much bigger. There's so many more people to please. And so it gets so hard to please everybody is one of the problems. When you have a diverse party, there's all of these questions that have to be answered, and et cetera, and so on. At any rate, let's listen to a little bit more of Harry Enton.
whereby more people are actually voting on the Democratic side. And I will note, it really hasn't even been close since 2002. Overwhelmingly more people have been voting on the Republican side in Texas. And this year so far, more people are voting on the Democratic side.
This is different, very different with a capital V in this case. So we still have a few days to go here. What are the chances? What are the prediction markets saying about the chances this will stick?
Okay, so we're only really been talking about the early vote. But if you look at the Kalshi prediction market, what you actually see is the chance to have higher Texas primary turnout. Right now, the people putting their money where their mouth is actually slightly predict that there'll be more votes cast on the Democratic side.
And now more votes cast being on the Democratic side, it may or may not mean anything. It might mean that the Republican candidates, for whatever reason, aren't as exciting. It might mean that the real competition and more interesting race is the Tallarico Crockett race. I suspect that that's the reason. Remember that how Jasmine Crockett ends up running for the Senate, because it is an interesting story. The reason she's running for the Senate is her House seat was eliminated when Donald Trump signaled the Republicans in the Texas Senate to eliminate her U.S. House of Representatives seat. The reason that happened, of course, was redistricting, mid-decade redistricting, which is very rare. Texas was the first state to do this because, of course, Trump and the Republicans want to control the U.S. House. And how you do that, of course, is through the numbers in the, obviously in the states, congressional delegations and congressional maps. That set off a chain reaction. They effectively eliminated Jasmine Crockett's seat. And then Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, decides, I'm going to match Texas. They're basically rigging the system so that the Republicans will win. So then he does it. And then the same thing happens in Virginia, on and on and on, Missouri, North Carolina, on and on and on. So it really started with Texas and Jasmine Crockett's seat. And then Jasmine Crockett says, okay, I can't win my House seat because the Republicans in Texas just redrew that. I'm going to run for the U.S. Senate. I actually was extremely surprised that she did that. I thought, okay, I thought she would run and lose, or she'd just leave Congress and do something else. I mean, she was in the state House, but she ran for U.S. Senate. And for somebody running, particularly a black candidate in a red state, I thought, man, that's surprising. That's surprising, and then she did it. So it's happening. And now you got Tallarico versus Crockett. And that's how you ended up with this extremely interesting race. Let's listen a little bit more to CNN.
Then on the Republican side, 60% to 40%, still a close race. But given that Republicans have been so outvoting Democrats and
All right, I think we get it. And I really appreciate his passion and enthusiasm.
We definitely get it. Let's go back to Rick Wilson and Andrew Wilson. These guys are really good. They talk about polling, they talk about all sorts of stuff. But the fact that they talked about the Crockett race, I was a little surprised. Talk about the early voting and all this. Let's listen to that a little bit again.
Important indicators. One, Andrew, and you and I've studied early voter turnout before. Early voter turnout in Texas for Democrats is blowing the doors off.
Yeah, massively over what
the over-indexing on Democratic turnout is. I mean.
Now, so in terms of the polling, before we get to early vote, we do see a large enthusiasm gap, somewhere like 6 or 7% enthusiasm gap between Republicans and Democrats for voting intention this year.
Yep.
In Texas. And we do see, those generic ballot numbers that tell us that Democrats are leading Republicans. I think to see the sort of massive gulf that's emerging between how many people are picking up a Democratic ballot and how many people are picking up a Republican ballot that's emerging in Texas. Mm-hmm. That is stunning.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that this is probably Jasmine Crockett, if I had to guess. If I had to guess what the early voting was now, can't prove it. You'd have to have some exit polls to prove it. But what will ultimately prove it, as we all know, is the results on Tuesday. This morning, the Washington Post did a story on Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico. A Texas Senate race is testing Democrats' stomach for race and gender fights. You can say that again. Latino voters will probably decide the primary contest between Rep. Jasmine Crockett and State Rep. James Tallarico, two rising stars who are stylistic opposites. Yeah, they're definitely stylistic opposites. San Antonio, in the final weeks of the Senate primary race here, Jasmine Crockett has accused her Democratic opponent, James Talarico, of supporting ads that are straight up racist against her. She's called the questions about her electability in the red state a dog whistle aimed at demeaning her as a Black woman, and picked up the endorsement of the 2024 Senate Democratic nominee, who blasted Talarico for allegedly privately referring to him as a mediocre Black man, which we never got a full. That was the Colin Allred kerfluffle that happened about, I guess it was about a month ago. As the two face off in the March 3 primary for a critical U.S. Senate race in Texas, these thorny questions of race and gender have consumed the heated battle between the two Democratic Party stars. National Democrats may need Texas, which has remained outside their grasp for decades. A flip blue this year to have a shot at regaining control of the Senate. I really honestly don't think that the Democrats are going to win in Texas. I think whoever the Republican is, even if it's Paxton, I mean, I don't know. I think that it is a red state. I think Texas is a red state all day and all night. I would be absolutely shocked if the Democratic candidate won, whether it was Talarico or Crockett. I think the chances of the Democratic candidate losing are really high, and I'm surprised this is even being discussed. But the thing that you have to remember is that there are some extraordinary things happening in the country around Donald Trump. And when people get scared or worried, or in some way they get nervous about what's going on, particularly when in their own lives with the economy and things that have to do with money and kitchen table issues, it doesn't matter who's in that White House, whether it's a Republican or Democrat. When people get worried, when people start to lose money, when people start to get concerned about their own financial welfare, they're going to vote against the party that is in office at the time, whether it's Democrat or Republican, whether it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden, whether it's Ronald Reagan or Jimmy Carter. Remember that when Carter came in, when Reagan came in, Carter had a terrible economy going. I mean, there's a reason for these things happening. And so, part of this is just the inertia of people feeling uneasy about the future, and they will vote against the party that's in charge. And so when you see an enthusiasm gap building in early voting toward a Democratic Party that hasn't been successful in Texas for 4 decades, I mean, it's unbelievable. They haven't won anything since the 1990s statewide. And now you see an enthusiasm gap. All of a sudden, that to me is related to the climate in the country. It's related to Donald Trump, just the overall feeling. Sometimes among Trump supporters, that he's not doing what they said what he said he was going to do. And I think the America First thing, and we're seeing it right now. We're hearing a lot of it right now online from some conservatives, and not never Trumpers, people who are Republicans who voted for Donald Trump are a little bit grumpy right now, seeing billions of their tax money go to Venezuela and the Middle East. That's not what they voted for. So at any rate, this is going to be a very interesting Tuesday, as I think everybody knows. And judging from the comments, people are really interested in this race, right? I mean, people are interested in this race one way or the other, and Crockett has a very direct way of communicating that I think a lot of people respond to in a way. They look at it and they say, well, this is really just a Democratic version of Donald Trump. It's the Democratic version of Donald Trump in terms of style. I'm just going to say exactly what's on my mind. I don't care what you think. That has been the brand of Trump for 10 years. I mean, since he came down the escalator in 2016, the brand of Trump has been, I'm going to say what's on my mind. I don't care what you think. F your feelings. I don't, if you're hurt, that's your problem. And Crockett has a lot of that. The difference being, when Crockett gets into a hearing with somebody, she's going over facts. And when she's going over facts, it's very hard to get around some of the things that have just sort of been made up out of whole cloth by those in the MAGA White House of Donald Trump, and I think they find that very frustrating, quite frankly. Um, so MAGA is crying a little bit and whining on YouTube. I'm not sure why. I mean, y'all like this style. Come on, MAGA in the comments. The MAGA Republican folks in the comments right now. I know that you like the style of Donald Trump. We know it. He got over 80 million votes. He proved that that style of politics works. The direct, authentic, whether we agree with it or not, I'm not talking about agreement, political style. I'm not talking about political agreement. I'm talking about messaging style. And the messaging style has been very direct, I'm going to say whatever's on my mind about race, about gender, about whatever the hell it is that the subject is. And I don't care about whether or not you feel uneasy about how I think. I'm going to say it publicly. We haven't had a politician, I think, that's ever actually done that. Certainly a few have gotten close. We had a few in New York. I grew up in New York where we do have a lot of blunt politicians, but not many. Not many. And even those, several of those didn't do too well, as a matter of fact. But they got a lot of attention. They got a lot of media, that's for sure. And Trump not only got a lot of media, he actually won the election. He actually won. So it was more than just, oh, it's a stylistic thing and, oh, it's fun to watch, but you're not really winning. No, Trump has won now the presidency twice over Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris. So for you Trumpers out there that might be listening, I know you guys like this style. You might not like the politics of Jasmine Crockett. You might not agree with what she says from a political standpoint and certainly not from a policy standpoint, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. She says what's on her mind very bluntly. And like the old saying go, she puts it where the goats can get it. She doesn't play around with semantics. She's very, very direct. And so I'm a little surprised just on a stylistic level. You know, people don't like that now suddenly when it's a Democrat. I mean, I get it. It is a Democrat. So I'm not expecting the Republicans to vote for a Democrat, but it is, and vice versa. But it is kind of interesting, the level of, you know, oh my God, we can't stand Jasmine Crockett. What are you kidding me? She was created from the Trump era. This is Trump era politics. This is punch people rhetorically in the face politics. Take no prisoners, no holds barred. We're doing it. We're saying it. We're putting it out there. And this is what it is, right? I mean, come on. This is the thing that people said that they wanted, and they're getting it. Now Tallarico, of course, is a different story. Let's talk about him a little bit. His entire affect, of course, is completely different. Although what he is saying is very interesting and very strong. It almost has like an evangelical edge to it. Tallarico is sort of what I would call a, you know, a more, he's interesting, I think, for the Democrats because typically you just don't have this style of talker. I mean, you just don't. The Democrats don't necessarily have this style of talker. I mean, he is kind of a guy that to me is sort of, you know, the type of candidate that a lot of Democrats like to run because they like somebody who's a little bit Republican light in the way that this goes, a little bit, but not all the way.
Here's how to an elementary.
This is Lauren Boebert, the congresswoman, Republican congresswoman from Colorado.
Here's just what I would disagree, because I don't want indoctrination of any form, whether it comes from the left or the right in our schools.
Yeah.
I want education, not indoctrination.
Yes, can we have reading, right?
So you see that Tallarico's trying to sort of play the game a little bit there in that answer of I want common sense politics. This kind of reminds me of what Abigail Spanberger did when she was in Congress. Now she's the governor of Virginia. You know, I want common sense is a very widely used phrase for Democrats that don't want to appear too left wing.
And my problem is seeing politicians in Texas force everybody to put up a poster of the 10 Commandments when they don't even follow the 10 Commandments themselves.
And that is
how about that?
To me, I just think as people of faith, like we should be trying to follow those 10 Commandments. Absolutely. Rather than trying to force people to put up a poster, because to me that indicates a dead religion. If you
Yeah. So stuff like that, you typically don't even hear that conversation in politics at all. You typically don't hear these types of conversations. The one thing that Tallarico has done is put into the conversation these sort of ironic things about the right that you know nobody ever talks about. Right? Wow, we're talking about God and Jesus all the time, and then Donald Trump has a record of adultery. It's like that type of thing. Nobody really wants to talk about any of that, or make an issue about any of that. So why are we mandating that we're putting up 10 commandments? I mean, is it just for show, or is it just a poster? Not a bad question there. I would say that um we're going to find out again. We're going to find out on Tuesday. Did it work? Did it work? We're going to find out on Tuesday. Did it work? I actually have a feeling it's going to certainly work on some pieces of the electorate. It's going to be interesting to see what the women do, uh, particularly white women, white female voters in Texas on the Democratic side. Who are they voting for? Who are they choosing? That's going to be an interesting question.
Welcome, Congresswoman. You're in the sprint, full sprint to Tuesday.
I think this was yesterday on CNN, and actually, it was probably Friday on CNN.
As you've heard, many have talked about the different polls. Some polls show a very tight race. But what's your sense on the ground as early voting wraps up, I think, tomorrow?
Yeah, people are fired up. I will tell you that the story that no one realized they were going to have to write is the influence of young women in this election. Young women have been very emotional about my candidacy and about this race. And so they are telling everyone, they're calling their moms, their grandmoms, their dads, and they're like, go vote. I've been on FaceTime talking to some of them.
So Jasmine Crockett is somebody, as a lot of people might already understand, it does really, really well on social media. So when she says young voters, and we are seeing that young voters are starting to get more and more involved than they were. And I don't think as involved as older voters. Older voters really take the cake in terms of actually showing up and voting. It's the older voters that really do that, whether they be on the right or left. And so it's interesting that she says that, because if that's the case, that might be the piece that's driving a lot of her turnout, or a lot of the early vote turnout. Again, we don't know that it's her turnout. Maybe they're showing up for Tallarico. I don't know. I tend to doubt that. I tend to doubt that the reason that we're getting a big spike in early voting in Texas is James Tallarico. Could be true, but again, that answer doesn't show up until Tuesday night, probably around 11 p.m. Eastern. It is Sunday, March 1, 2026. I'm on the East Coast, so it is 9:27 a.m. I've been waiting all morning for MS Now to play Mark Warner, because I cover Virginia politics and on the Iran situation. But once again, the Iran situation, is that going to have an impact on the Texas voters? I mean, if I got any Texas voters in the chat, I seem to have a lot of people in the chat right now. If any of them from Texas, I'd love to hear from you, because does it matter to you that the United States has joined with Israel to attack Iran and killed their leader yesterday, or does it not matter? Were you going to, vote for the same person regardless of that incident? Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. It's hard to tell with these things whether or not on the weekend before an election. Some people, of course, have already voted. So, we have the weekend before an election. Does it matter that a war was declared on Iran right before that? And I do think a lot of Americans are very tired of these wars. They're very tired of their money going overseas. They're just tired of it. They're tired of, it doesn't matter who it is, Biden or anybody else, or Trump. They're just tired of it. So I'm just reading some of the comments. I mean, if I get some sensible ones, I'll put them up. Yes, it matters, but it doesn't change my vote. Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm telling you, I know that a few people in chat are trying to impress me with their levels of racism. It just doesn't. You guys have to understand, Black people in this country are used to that. It's not. You're not going to scare us with this in a chat. I mean, it's just not going to happen, because it doesn't matter to us. Like, we've been through so much for 400 years in this country. It's just not. And a kid from the Bronx, it's definitely not gonna matter. 90s Black Panther. Maybe she does act like a 90s Black Panther. I don't know. I wouldn't say a 90s Black Panther. I just think that a lot of people are not used to. I mean, let's face it, everybody. We grow up in this country. This country is still pretty segregated. The communities are still very segregated. So what people see in their own lives and what they hear and everything in their own lives is going to be different. And when you have somebody who's a candidate who's young, under the age of 40, in the internet communications era, which is a much more blunt era. Now we're seeing politicians, like I said, drop the F word, and you never would see that. When I was working in politics, when I first grew up, I was a teenager. There's no way in this world that anybody behind a microphone, I don't care if it was a Democrat, Republican, male, female, black, white, or anything else, get behind a mic and drop an F bomb, much less write it online. Now you're seeing that. Our politics have become more crass, blunter, and I think the word that a lot of consultants would use, not necessarily a word that I would use, but authentic. They like to call it, oh, you're being authentic, that you're dropping the F bomb. That's become the new standard. So for somebody like in the era that we're in right now, what we're seeing from a lot of elected officials, and Jasmine Crockett is one of them, is she's talking kind of like she's in her living room. I mean, she's talking like she's out in the backyard gardening. A lot of these interviews, and it's kind of like, this is how I'm going to present. I'm not going to code switch over to another personality because I'm behind a microphone. And all I'm saying is that we got that. Donald Trump was the first one that really presented that. And again, if I'm wrong, name another politician. I can't think of anyone that presented that first in terms of the level of candor and bluntness. I didn't necessarily agree with it in terms of what he was saying. I'm talking about the style. I'm talking about the communications style. I'm not talking about, the policy behind or not behind what he was saying. So I do think. Oh, I didn't know Andrew was Rick's son. I totally did not know that. I totally did not know that Andrew was. I should have figured that out. Why would these two people be on the same thing? So yeah, thanks, Patrick. So at any rate, a Black Panther. I mean, people don't even know what a Black Panther is, Duan. So I mean, our country too is at a huge disadvantage because we don't learn each other's history. As somebody from New York, a very diverse place, you end up inadvertently or intentionally learning the history of other people, either because of all the festivals and all the ethnic festivals we have in New York. One is coming up. It's really not a festival. It's more the parade, which is St. Patrick's Day parade. But you do end up learning other people's history, including your own. But in the United States, we are very funny about wanting to teach the histories of other people and how they may, in fact, impact our ancestors, whomever our ancestors may be. So there's a little bit of a resentment there. And like I said, Donald Trump has set up a permission structure for racism. His entire administration has set up a permission structure for racism. They've made racism cool again, like it was in the 50s and 60s. We're taking down artifacts of history, American history, that has anything to do with African Americans. Why? Why are we doing that? It makes no sense. The fear and the insecurity is real. Absolutely real. And I think so some of the reaction to Jasmine Crockett's coming from that. And some of that reaction is misogyny, straight up misogyny. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that the Democrats run two women and they both lose by a very small margin. Hillary Clinton had an unbelievable resume. May not like Hillary Clinton. I have a lot of friends that didn't like Hillary Clinton that much. They didn't really like her that much. And they were sort of in this vein of, I'll vote for her because she's a Democrat. But they weren't that excited about her. They really were more excited about the way that Harris came across. But it is interesting. There's still that group of people in this country that have a hard time voting for a woman in a leadership position. There's no doubt about that. I certainly saw that in my own life with my friends, black and white. And that's a thing. That's a thing. Let me see. Looking at hi to Mike, hi to Patrick Queen, hi to Jawan, hi to Miss Sparks. Miss Sparks, thanks for being a member. Roland Martin said he talked with Tallarico before he ran, told him to run governor because he could not. Yeah, I mean that actually, I could see Tallarico more as a governor than in the Senate. Senate's a pain in the neck. I'm always surprised that people run for the Senate because, quite frankly, Congress doesn't do a whole lot. You can do a lot more as a governor in a state, even in a situation where, the legislature might be the other party, you still can do more as a governor. But Tallarico ran for the Senate, and now we have this unbelievably interesting primary on Tuesday. This unbelievably interesting primary on Tuesday between two people who pretty much agree on the issues, and yet, like I said, from a stylistic standpoint, there's some difference.
So that's really exciting and encouraging to see. But yes, you put up a poll that is all good. I need Texas to recognize that the last day of early voting is tomorrow, and the only polls that matter are the polls that you show up to vote at.
There could be more Democratic early voters than Republican ones, even though both races, they are competitive. But tell me, Congressman, what message do you think that sends about Texas and really the midterm electorate overall?
Yeah. You know, a lot of people thought I was a crash dummy. And they were like, why are you leaving the House? Why are you running for the Senate? It's Texas. And I kept telling people that we have the numbers. We are voter suppressed, and there is a bit of voter apathy. But
there's a lot of voter apathy. They do have the numbers. Of course, Texas is a state that has more African Americans in the population than any other state in the United States. Texas is also majority minority. Texas is majority Hispanics right now by I think it's very small margin, like 2 or 3%, but still white folks are outnumbered in Texas. And that's why this is all very interesting. I don't even know what the Hispanic voting bloc is going to do with this race. Somebody in the chat tell me. I have no idea what they're going to do one way or the other. There tends to be a lot of Republican Hispanic voters, so in a Democratic primary, we're probably not going to get that answer. But this is going to be. I can't wait to see the results of this, and of course, I will do a live on it because there's just a lot to say in terms of what happens. There's a lot to say in terms of what happens moving forward with the Democratic Party, because they're going to have to figure out for the rest of the year how to defeat the Republicans and trying to take back the U.S. House, and then how to defeat whomever the nominee is. And maybe it's Donald Trump again, who knows, for 2028. But you can see a lot of stuff going on where there is a lot of talking about a memo that might become an executive order from the president about interfering in some way or another with the midterm elections in 2026. Whether or not that's going to happen is, of course, not known yet, but we're going to see. We're going to see what's going on really fast in the next 200 days. And I do think that the president will drop an executive order that will in some way try to interfere with the midterm elections, because that's the only way that, in my view, that they can win the House. And the fact that anybody's even talking about the Senate, and the fact that anybody's even talking about Texas, should shock every Republican in Texas. I mean, the fact that that's even in the conversation, or that that's even in play, or that that's even a possibility, is to me shocking. From a political standpoint, it's extremely shocking, because Texas is a red state. But as Crockett just said on CNN, it's kind of like, or she said on Friday on CNN, it's a state with the numbers, but there's apathy and there's lack of organization when it comes to getting people to the voting booth.
I was like, we can do this. And as you can see right now, we have maintained a lead over the Republicans throughout the entirety of early voting. We'll see if that flips tomorrow. But this tells me that we have enough Texans who just haven't been voting. We are one of the lowest voter turnout states in the entire country. And I kept saying, we just need to turn our people out. We're really not that red. And right now they are coming out in droves. And I'm telling everyone that I talk to, listen, this is great, but if we outvote the Republicans in this primary, I need y'all to understand they are going to do everything that they can in November to preclude us from being able to access the ballot box.
Yeah, there's going to be some real games happening. I mean, this is really about power. There's a question of power and control. Let's listen to a little bit more of Tallarico. He was on Bill Maher. I think this was like a week ago. This is a little bit of time ago. This was not necessarily that recent. The Crockett interview was from Friday.
You have to force people to put up a poster to prove your legitimacy. That means we don't have a living faith anymore.
Sure.
And so I think this is not just a threat to democracy. I think it's a threat to the church, because that separation doesn't just protect the state, it protects the church. Because when the church gets too cozy with political power, it loses its prophetic voice, its ability to speak truth to power. And that's what that separation is it's what it protects. And it's why Christians, including many Protestant Christians, fought for that separation, because they believed it benefited them. We got to get back to that in this country.
A lot going on there. I mean, there's definitely, you just have sort of these two styles. I think the Democrats actually should feel a little bit lucky about having two candidates that are spurring excitement. Apparently, I mean, if you've got record turnout, best since 2002, the Democratic Party should feel pretty good about that. You know, for the first time in a long time, because I can't remember, other than Beto O'Rourke, anybody in the last 10 years that was all that interesting that ran on the Democratic side in Texas. And hey, I mean, to me, it's kind of like a reflection of having two candidates a lot of people are interested in. And so that turnout number is going to be very interesting to see. We already know it's going to be a high one. And hey, good. I mean, good for our democracy that people are showing up in one of our most important states, Texas, and a state that's been red. But people pay attention. You know, a lot of people out there, whether you're Democrat or Republican, whatever you're registered, you want to see things going well, not only in your financial life and your economic life. You want to see things going well in your community. You want to see the roads paved. You want to see the schools being built. You want to see repairs in those schools. You want to see new books being handed out. You want to see the basic things that government is in fact responsible for. Whether you like it or not, they are, and whether or not they do that well matters. So when these candidates speak to those more bread and butter issues, they, you know, typically there is a bigger turnout. When people feel like their vote matters, there is a bigger turnout. So the big turnout with regard to the with regard to the Texas early voting numbers, I don't know why that shouldn't be a surprise, because you have one candidate with a lot of personality, and certainly Tallarico has less personality, but what he's saying is freaking compelling. But we live in an age now with these politicians in their 30s that are really good at communication strategy. I mean, they're just really good. They're really good at putting it out there. And I know a lot of people can't stand Mom Dami. Oh, Mom Dami this, Mom Dami that. I don't know how you deny that that guy is not a top shelf level communicator on video, on podcast, on speaking into things, doing interviews, doing press conferences. He's good. That's why, you know, that's why people are paying attention. The other thing he did very well was he hammered a few issues. Whether you agree with them or not doesn't matter. He hammered a few issues home. He got them across. He got everybody thinking about what he wanted them to be thinking about with his candidacy. And you either liked it or not. You either voted for it or you didn't. And it works. It absolutely works. And so from Mamdani, again, it's that new style politician that we're seeing in their 30s that came up in the age of the iPad. You know, they were kids when the iPad comes out, and I don't know, to probably 2005 or 6 or something like that. And the iPhone's starting to get big at 2007 and 8. Facebook starts to get big in 2007 or 8. Pretty sure Twitter came along in 2007. These people grew up in that era, and it shows. They're very good at the social media piece. Now, of course, that's not the only piece that you should be good at or matters in this. You actually have to know what you're doing. It would be nice if you knew what you were doing. But they certainly know how to communicate what the heck is going on in their head about how they would like to rule the world, control the world, and in fact, run a city or run a country or run a state. So Jasmine Crockett, first I thought Jasmine Crockett was 20. Jasmine Crockett does seem a lot younger than, but this is a black don't crack type of thing. She does seem a lot younger than she actually is. But when you listen to her a little bit, she knows policy. I mean, there's a lot of Republicans out there I might disagree with, but they do know their policy. Unfortunately, not too many of them are in the White House right now, but a lot of them are in Congress and they know policy. It's going to be interesting to see what's happening with the career of John Cornyn. John Cornyn So one of the things that Rick Wilson brought up on that podcast is John Cornyn is not MAGA. And this is the moment, I think, when you do see the power of the MAGA Republican Party. I think John Cornyn is probably going to lose. And he is getting older. Certainly that's a factor in this. And that Republican side of the primary is quite interesting. But I think primarily he loses because he's just been around too long. And I don't know that he's as strong of a communicator as his opponents. 43, gosh. And an attorney. It's amazing. But again, these younger politicians are doing really well with their communications, and that matters. That matters. And so we'll see if Jasmine Crockett is able to pull it off. Tallarico, if he wins, the Democrats still have a really good candidate for November. I think either way, the Democrats still have a really good candidate for November. But Tallarico is a different type of situation. And it's really a Republican light type of situation for the Democratic Party. It was a type of candidate that we've seen many times. So before I go, I'm going to read a few comments in the chat. Tell me what the left has done. Not a bad question. Tell me what the left has done besides start a proxy war in Ukraine and blame the next administration. Yeah. Well, one thing the left did do, you can't deny it. The Democratic Party is really good at protecting social safety net related programs. Certainly, they were responsible for the healthcare system that we have now that wasn't as great as it was before the Affordable Care Act. Not to say it was, totally terrible, but certainly the affordability factors did get better. And then, of course, the Republican Party started to dismantle little by little, bit by bit, pieces of the Affordable Care Act, which they continue to do, all while having no plan. Health insurance in this country is a huge thing. And it shouldn't be tethered to your job. I think Bernie Sanders' effort for single payer was trying to get rid of this idea that you only get health care if it's tethered to your job. I'm not sure why that was the case. But as far as proxy wars in Ukraine, I didn't think that was a good idea. I'm not a big foreign policy fan. Anytime I see tax money going out of this country, I'm ticked off. I don't care where it is. I don't care if it's Ukraine. I don't care what it is. I mean, I think we should do a certain level of humanitarian related things, but I do not like paying taxes and seeing it going out of this country into the billions of dollars. I don't care if it's Venezuela. I don't care if it's the Middle East. I don't care if it's Ukraine. I don't care what it is. I'm not sure why we can fix everybody else's problems around the world to the tune of billions of dollars. And then we got people sleeping out on streets in California and New York and down south and every place else. There's a problem with that. And these countries, these other countries, you study other countries, whatever country it is, they take care of their country first, and then they get involved with everybody else. And the United States, of course, one of the wealthiest countries on the planet, I think our presidents do spend too much time on proxy wars in Ukraine and bombing Iran. It's just ridiculous. I do think that's ridiculous. And so the Democrats are just as guilty as the Republicans on that one. No juice from the black vote without Jasmine Crockett. Probably true. So the level of enthusiasm for that big voting bloc that votes Democrat over 90% of the time is going to go down if it's Tallarico. That's definitely true. If Jasmine Crockett loses, Texas Democrats are going to have a really hard time having that same level of enthusiasm. And if I'm right on my little theory that this enthusiasm that we're seeing in the early vote numbers is in fact Jasmine Crockett, which I think it is, that would tell you that it's a better deal for the Democrats to have a get out the vote campaign that features Crockett's candidacy. Because again, Texas has more black people in it than any other state in the country. And the question is, can you get them to the voting booth? Can you get them to the voting poll is the whole ball game. And Cap for Life, have a great weekend. And so that is that's the key to the whole thing. Getting the turnout is the whole deal. Let me think here. Vote against your own best interest. Vote Republican. Yeah. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat out there in chat. I've voted for a few Republicans. I've voted mostly Democrat, but every now and then there's a Republican that comes along. And for whatever reason, it just depends on who it is. When I was growing up in New York, I grew up on Long Island. The Republicans and the Democrats, it was really no big ideological difference because in local politics, everybody's just talking about paving streets and building schools, Democrat and Republican. They're not really talking about some of these issues that are more national. They're just not. So it is a situation where, you know, it doesn't, ideological differences don't matter. It's really something that happens more on a national level or a bigger race like a US Senate race. Certainly ideological issues do matter in a US Senate race. So I get it, but I do think that there are certain issues that bring Democrats and Republicans together. One of them is money and where that money goes. Where billions of dollars in tax money goes tends to bring Republicans and Democrats together. That is definitely Rochester. That's all right. RIT. I got a lot of friends that went to RIT. Yeah. The funny thing, Long Island doesn't have. Long Island has the type of Republicans when I was growing up that were kind of like Reagan Republicans. They were Reagan. Obviously, this is far before the MAGA era. But right now, the situation is so polarized because of Donald Trump's insistence that he will tell us one thing and do another. So you talked about America first the entire campaign, and now you're, sending our money over to Iran. Okay. All right. And blowing people up in the Middle East because Benjamin Netanyahu wants you to. All right. At some point, we got to get a president in here that actually focuses 90% of his time on citizens in the United States of America. And foreign policy stories, the minute I look at the screen and I see a bunch of foreign policy stories, I know we got trouble. And same thing happened with Biden. There wasn't that much of a difference with Biden. I mean, the countries were different. He's talking more about Ukraine than Trump talks about Ukraine. But it's the same thing because the money is going out of the country. Whether it's going to Ukraine or the Middle East, to me, is not necessarily that relevant. But anyway, it's going out of here. That's what it's doing. So let me see. Read a few comments before I bounce. Yeah, this is pretty much it. Thanks everybody for joining. Please hit the like button. I really enjoy comments, even the ones I don't like or the ones I disagree with. Doesn't matter. I'm not afraid of disagreement. I'm not afraid of disagreement. I mean, there's always somebody in the comments. There were a few today. It's just like a waste because it's just silly. It's just silly foolishness. But other people have some very interesting things to say about this race. And this is going to be quite something. Again, the Washington Post did do a story this morning on the Crockett-Tallarico race. I'll put the link in the chat. It's an interesting story that basically just goes over everything that I just discussed, but they do it in kind of, a more simple way, going over some of the parts of the race that happened with the Colin Allred thing. And I mean, there was so many little things that happened. I don't know that Tallarico handled that as well as he could have. There's certain things that come up in these races that are, of course, unpredictable in every race. And somebody who's been part of politics and campaigns, is always unpredictable craziness that comes up in every race. And you got to have a response to it, More identity politics. You watch this woman in the committee. She gets schooled all the time. Not that smart. I don't know about that. I think Crockett does a very interesting job in committee. She tends to corner people in the committee hearings in a way, corner them with facts. And whether or not we agree with those facts in terms of agreeing on a policy level is another story, but she's good at asking a witness a direct question and trying to get an answer. That she's quite good at. Oh my goodness. Do you think with her stacking down ballot tickets is helping already in Hosa, the pastor in Dallas? Yeah. Pastor in Dallas from her church. I actually don't have an answer for that. Fourth, yeah. There's some other races going on. That actually is going to be interesting. How to see? We're all looking at the Senate race, but there's actually a lot of other races going on in Texas that also are going to be quite fascinating to watch. I don't know the answer to that one. Patrick McQueen, great name. So to handle the snowball fight in New York. Yeah, we'll leave on the snowball fight. So yeah, I do think I can't wait. I'll probably do a live on Tuesday night. I'll enjoy some of the cable and I'll get away from cable and do a live on Tuesday night on Tallarico Crockett and talk about it as it's happening, talk about it as the results are coming in, and see what's going on, see if she was the person who was driving the turnout. Maybe she wasn't. She might not have been. Could it just be, people are ticked off at Donald Trump and we're showing up, Democrats are showing up, and we're going to be there at the It could be just that. Or it could be Jasmine Crockett. So we'll see how that works. Thanks for hitting the like button. Hit subscribe even if you'd like to do that. That's even more crazy, hitting that subscribe button. At any rate, the like button does push the video out, which is why every time you watch a video these days, everybody's talking about hitting the like button because they know that pushes the video out. At any rate, this is Lauren Burke. I'll be back fairly soon, probably with something related to the Iran war that the United States is suddenly involved in. It's incredible how suddenly we're involved in another war. This is amazing. Thanks for everybody. Thanks everyone for joining. Let's see what happens on Tuesday with the United States Senate race in Texas that will feature Congresswoman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett, and Texas State Rep. James Tallarico. Thanks for watching.
Somewhere. What's going on? Thank you. Are you watching now?
Yeah. No, I was watching when I left, but it's excellent. I love it. I love the traffic's blowing up. You were in Brooklyn last night. Where?
I was in Bushwick.
Okay, my grandmother's house is in Crown Heights.
Oh, yeah.
So when I saw you, I was trying to look at what the pizza place was to see where.
As soon as we got there, someone recognized the pizza place. They're like, we got to get out of here. Someone had
get out. It was great.
blown up our spot.
This show is freaking fantastic.
Thank you.
Love it. Love it, man. Love it.